Rain slammed violently against the hospital windows as Daniel ran through the emergency entrance with blood dripping from his forehead. "Please!" he shouted desperately. "My mother? Where is my mother?" Nurses turned in shock as he stumbled toward the front desk, still wearing his security uniform. His hands trembled so badly he could barely hold onto the counter. The woman behind the desk looked nervous. "You're Daniel?" "Yes," she hesitated, and in that moment, Daniel knew something was wrong. Very wrong. "She left the hospital 30 minutes ago." His heartbeat nearly stopped. "What do you mean she left?" he yelled. "She can barely walk." The nurse swallowed hard before sliding a small white envelope toward him. "She told us to give you this." Daniel's fingers shook as he opened it. Inside were only 4 words. "Forgive me, my son." The world around him went silent. 3 hours earlier, Daniel had been standing outside a restaurant washing grease from his hands after finishing the first of his 3 jobs. By noon, he was delivering food across the city under brutal heat. At night, he guarded an empty warehouse filled with broken containers and rats. 3 jobs every day, no sleep, no future, no life. And somehow it still wasn't enough. Not when his mother was dying. He stared at the note again as pain tightened violently inside his chest. "No," he whispered. "Mom wouldn't leave me." But deep inside, fear had already begun crawling through him like poison. Because for weeks, something about her had changed. Something she refused to explain. Daniel was 23 years old, and for the last 4 years, his entire life had revolved around one thing: keeping his mother alive. Everything began after his father disappeared when Daniel was 16. One morning, the man simply walked out of their tiny apartment and never returned. No goodbye, no explanation. His mother cried for months afterward, but eventually she forced it herself to smile again for her son. "You're the man of the house now," she used to tell him while gently rubbing his hair. Back then, Daniel thought being the man of the house meant helping carry groceries. He didn't know it meant sacrificing his dreams piece by piece until there was nothing left of him. 2 years later, he dropped out of college after his mother became seriously ill. Doctors said her condition required constant treatment. Treatment they couldn't afford. Daniel still remembered the first time he worked a double shift. He came home around 2 in the morning exhausted and dizzy, only to find his mother pretending to sleep so he wouldn't notice she hadn't eaten all day.
It's gonna be okay.
"Mom," he whispered while kneeling beside her bed. "Why didn't you call me?" She opened her eyes slowly and forced a weak smile. "You already work too hard." Anger burned inside him. "I'm supposed to take care of you." "And who takes care of you?" she asked softly. He had no answer, because the truth was, nobody did. The very next morning, Daniel picked up a 3rd job. From that point on, life became an endless cycle of exhaustion. Wake up at 5 in the morning, clean restaurant floors, deliver food until sunset, guard warehouses all night, sleep 2 hours, repeat, every single day. Sometimes, while riding his delivery bike through heavy traffic, hunger blurred his vision. Sometimes during security shifts, he fought sleep so hard his knees nearly collapsed beneath him. But every time he thought about quitting, he remembered seeing his mother cough blood into tissues when she thought he wasn't watching. So he kept going, because losing her was not an option. One evening, Daniel returned home carrying medicine and cheap roach when he heard his mother speaking quietly on the phone inside the apartment. Her voice sounded strange, afraid. "No. He can never find out," she whispered. Daniel froze outside the door. "Find out what?" A second later, the conversation ended abruptly. When he stepped inside, she quickly wiped tears from her face. "Who were you talking to?" he asked. "No one. Mom, it was nothing." But Daniel knew it wasn't nothing. From that day forward, the secrets multiplied. Mysterious phone calls, hidden documents, late-night crying, and one photograph she constantly stared at when she thought he was asleep. A photograph of his father, the same man Daniel believed had abandoned them. One rainy night, he finally confronted her. "Mom, what are you hiding from me?" Panic filled her eyes instantly. Then she grabbed his hand tightly. "Daniel," she whispered shakily, "if anything ever happens to me, promise me you won't go looking for answers." Fear slowly crept down his spine. "What are you talking about?" But before she could answer, she started coughing violently. Blood splattered across the floor, and at that exact moment, everything began to fall apart. "Mom!" Daniel dropped to his knees beside her as blood stained the floor between them. Her body shook violently while she struggled to breathe. "No, no, no! Stay with me!" With trembling hands, he called an ambulance while pressing a towel against her mouth. His heart pounded so hard it felt like it might explode. She looked terrified. Not because of the blood, because of him. "Daniel," she whispered weakly while grabbing his wrist. "Please don't hate me." Tears instantly filled his eyes. "Hate you? What are you talking about?" But she only coughed harder. That night at the hospital felt endless. Doctors rushed in and out of her room while Daniel sat alone in the hallway staring at the floor. He hadn't slept in nearly 2 days. His uniform still smelled like engine oil from deliveries. Around 3 in the morning, a doctor finally approached him. "We've stabilized her for now," the doctor said carefully. "But she needs surgery soon." "How much?" The doctor hesitated. The number he mentioned made Daniel's stomach drop. It was impossible. Completely impossible. Still, Daniel forced himself to nod. "I'll get the money." But even as he said the words, fear wrapped tightly around his throat. Because he had already borrowed money from everyone he knew. The next few weeks became pure hell. Daniel worked extra delivery shifts during the day while still handling security work at night. Sometimes he rode through heavy rain with soaked shoes and an empty stomach just to earn a little more money. One afternoon, while delivering food to a luxury apartment building, he nearly collapsed inside the elevator from exhaustion. A wealthy woman standing beside him frowned. "You look terrible," she said coldly. Daniel laughed weakly. "Yeah, life's been busy." When the elevator doors opened, he carried her food to the apartment door. Then he noticed something strange. A family portrait hanging inside the apartment. The man in the picture looked exactly like his father. Daniel froze instantly. The customer quickly shut the door before he could get a better look. His chest tightened painfully. No, it couldn't be him. Could it? That entire night, Daniel couldn't focus at work. Questions attacked his mind endlessly. Why did his mother still keep his father's photograph? Why had she been acting afraid lately? And why did she beg him not to search for answers? The next morning, Daniel returned home after his night shift and found his mother sitting quietly by the window staring outside. For a moment, she looked peaceful, but also deeply sad. "You should be resting," he said gently. She smiled faintly. "And you should be sleeping." Daniel sat beside her. "Mum, did Dad ever contact you after he left?" Her expression changed instantly. Fear again. "No, you're lying." Her hands trembled slightly. "Daniel, I saw someone yesterday," he interrupted, "someone connected to him." Silence filled the room, then she suddenly stood up. "You need to let the past stay buried." Anger surged through him. "Buried?" he snapped. "He abandoned us. He abandoned you." Her voice cracked. "You don't understand. Then help me understand." Tears rolled down her cheeks, but instead of answering, she walked away. That hurt Daniel more than the poverty, more than the exhaustion, more than the hunger, the secrets, the growing distance between them. For the first time in his life, he felt like his own mother was hiding behind a wall he could never break through. 3 days later, things became even worse. During his restaurant shift, Daniel received a call from the landlord. "If you don't pay rent by tomorrow, both of you are out." "Please," Daniel begged quietly, "just give me more time. I've already given you enough." The call ended. Daniel stood frozen in the kitchen while insults from the head chef echoed around him. "Move faster. Table 6 is waiting." "Are you deaf?" His hands shook so badly he dropped a plate. It shattered across the floor. The restaurant fell silent. The manager stormed toward him furiously. "That's coming out of your salary." Daniel stared at the broken pieces and felt something inside himself breaking too. That evening, he skipped dinner again so his mother could eat. But when he placed the food before her, she pushed the plate back toward him. "You need it more. I already ate. You're lying." Daniel forced a small smile. "So are you." For a brief moment, they laughed softly together. But hidden behind that laughter was pain neither of them knew how to fix. That night after his mother fell asleep, Daniel searched through old boxes looking for anything connected to his father, and then he found it. A newspaper clipping hidden inside an envelope. The headline read, "Local businessman disappears." After fraud investigation below the article was his father's photograph. Daniel's breathing stopped. Businessman? Fraud investigation? None of it made sense. His father wasn't rich. At least, that was what Daniel had always believed. Suddenly, he heard movement behind him. His mother stood frozen in the doorway staring at the newspaper in horror. "Where did you get that?" she whispered. "You lied to me," Daniel said slowly. Tears instantly filled her eyes. "Daniel, please." "Who was my father?" His voice echoed through the apartment. She broke down crying. But before she could answer, her phone rang. The moment she saw the caller ID, all color vanished from her face. She looked absolutely terrified. Then she whispered words that made Daniel's blood run cold. "They found us. They found us." The words hit Daniel like ice water. His mother's hands trembled violently as the phone continued ringing in her palm. For several seconds, she could only stare at it in horror, unable to move. Daniel quickly grabbed her shoulders. "Mum, who found us?" Tears streamed down her face as she looked at him. "You need to leave." "What, right now?" Fear and frustration exploded inside him. "No, I'm tired of this," Daniel shouted. "Every day it's another secret, another lie. Tell me what's happening." The phone suddenly stopped ringing. Silence swallowed the apartment. Then a message notification appeared on the screen. His mother looked down at it and nearly collapsed. Daniel caught her before she hit the floor. "Mum!" She clutched his shirt desperately. They know where we live now, she whispered. Who? But before she could answer, a violent knock slammed against the apartment door. Bang, bang, bang. Both of them froze instantly. Another knock came harder this time. Grace, a male voice shouted from outside. Open the door! Daniel looked at his mother in shock. He had never seen fear like that in her eyes before, not even during her worst moments in the hospital. Daniel, she whispered shakily, listen to me carefully. You cannot let them see you. What are you talking about? They think you don't know anything yet. Know what? Another violent bang shook the door. Open up. His mother grabbed Daniel's face tightly. If they ask questions, you say nothing about your father. Daniel's chest tightened painfully. What did Dad do? Pain filled her eyes instantly. He tried to protect us. The very next second, the apartment door burst open. 3 men stepped inside wearing dark suits. Not police. Not criminals either. Something worse. The kind of men who smiled without warmth. The tallest one looked directly at Daniel's mother. You've been avoiding calls. Daniel immediately stepped in front of her. Who the hell are you? The man ignored him completely. Then his eyes drifted toward the newspaper clipping lying on the floor. Everything changed instantly. His expression darkened. So, he said quietly, the boy knows. Daniel's pulse exploded. What's going on? The man crouched slowly and picked up the newspaper clipping. You should told him the truth years ago, Grace. Please, Daniel's mother begged softly. Leave him out of this. Out of what? The apartment suddenly felt too small, too hot, too dangerous. The tall man looked directly into Daniel's eyes. Your father wasn't the man you think he was. Anger surged through Daniel immediately. He abandoned us. No, the man replied coldly. He disappeared. Daniel's breathing stopped. What? His mother burst into tears. The man sighed heavily before pulling an old photograph from his coat pocket and handing it to Daniel. Daniel stared at it in confusion. The photograph showed his father standing side beside several wealthy men in suits outside a massive building. Behind them was the logo of a company worth millions. His hands began shaking uncontrollably. This can't be real. Oh, it's very real, the man replied calmly. Your father co-owned one of the largest property investment companies in the state. Daniel suddenly felt dizzy. No, the man continued speaking, until someone betrayed him. Daniel slowly turned toward his mother. She couldn't even look at him anymore. Every memory from his childhood suddenly felt fake. The poverty, the suffering, the struggle. No, Daniel whispered weakly. No, you're lying. The man stepped closer. Your father discovered financial crimes inside the company. The people responsible turned against him before he could expose them. And then what happened? Daniel asked quietly. He vanished. A cold chill spread through Daniel's entire body. Vanished. Not abandoned them. Vanished. He looked at his mother in disbelief. You knew? She completely broke down. Yes, Daniel's heart shattered. You let me hate him all these years? I was trying to protect you. From what? Her breathing became uneven. After your father disappeared, they came after us too. Silence swallowed the room again. They threatened to kill you, she whispered. Fear slowly crawled down Daniel's spine. What? I took you and ran, she cried. We changed apartments constantly, changed jobs, disappeared from everyone. Suddenly everything made sense, the secrecy, the fear, the lies. She wasn't hiding the truth because she hated him. She was terrified. The tall man interrupted quietly. They found new evidence recently. That's why people are searching again. Daniel's mother closed her eyes painfully. They'll never stop. Daniel stared down at the photograph in his trembling hands. For years, he had destroyed himself working 3 jobs believing his father abandoned them, when the truth was far darker. Then another horrifying thought struck him. If Dad was rich, he whispered slowly, what happened to everything he owned? The men exchanged glances silently. No one answered immediately. But that silence told Daniel everything. Someone had stolen it. Someone had taken everything from them. Rage burned through his chest so fiercely he could barely breathe. All those years, he muttered. All those years we suffered while someone else lived off our lives. His mother grabbed his arm desperately. Daniel, listen to me. Revenge will destroy you. But Daniel wasn't listening anymore, because for the first time in his life, he realized his entire identity had been built on a lie. Then the tall man said something that changed everything again. We think your father might still be alive. The room started spinning around Daniel. What? His mother looked up sharply in shock. No, she whispered. That's impossible. The man reached into his pocket and placed a small silver key on the table. We found this hidden inside one of your father's abandoned properties. Daniel stared at the key silently. There's a storage unit downtown, the man continued, and whatever's inside may explain everything. Then he looked directly at Daniel. But if you open that door, his expression hardened. There's no turning back. The storage facility smelled like rust, dust, and old secrets. Daniel stood frozen in front of Unit 317 while the silver key trembled in his hand. His mother sat quietly inside the car behind him, too weak to walk any farther. Rain poured heavily outside. His heart pounded so loudly it nearly drowned out his thoughts. "Daniel," his mother called softly from the distance. "Please, we can still leave." Daniel looked back at her. For the first time in his life, he saw her differently. Not just as his sick mother, but as a terrified woman who had spent years carrying fear alone. Still, he needed answers. Slowly, Daniel inserted the key. Click. The metal door groaned loudly as it rolled upward. And then his entire world changed. Boxes, documents, photographs, cash records, property files, and at the center of the room, a giant framed picture of his father. Alive, older, but unmistakably alive. Daniel's knees nearly gave out beneath him. No way. He stumbled toward the photograph in disbelief. Behind it sat an old video recorder with a note attached. For Daniel. His hands shook uncontrollably as he pressed play. Static flickered across the screen, then his father appeared, older, exhausted, afraid, but alive. "Daniel," his father said weakly into the camera. "If you're watching this, then it means the truth finally found you." Daniel's breathing became uneven. "I'm sorry," his father continued, "for everything." Anger exploded inside Daniel instantly. "Sorry?" he shouted at the screen. "You disappeared." Tears burned down his face. "You left us to suffer." But then his father's expression broke, and Daniel realized something terrifying. This man had suffered too. "I never abandoned you," his father whispered painfully. "I ran because they were going to kill both of you." The room suddenly felt suffocating. "They framed me for crimes I tried to expose," his father continued. "When I fought back, people inside the company turned violent. Images flashed across the screen, burned documents, newspaper reports, hidden transactions, photographs of dangerous men." Daniel's stomach twisted painfully. "They took everything from us," his father said. "Our business, our homes, our future." Daniel slowly turned toward his mother. She stood silently near the entrance, crying softly. "You knew he was alive," he whispered. Her voice cracked. "Yes, the betrayal hit harder than anything else, all those years, all the suffering, and she knew. Why would you hide this from me?" Daniel screamed. She completely broke down. "Because I was afraid." "Afraid of what?" "That you would become like him." Silence crashed over the room. She stepped closer shakily. "Your father spent years chasing revenge," she cried, "and it destroyed him. I couldn't lose you too." Pain twisted through Daniel's chest. For the first time, finally understood her. Every lie, every secret, every painful silence. None of it came from hatred. It came from fear. His father's voice continued playing from the recorder. "Daniel, if you're hearing this, then they probably know about you already." Fear instantly returned. "There's evidence inside these boxes powerful enough to expose everyone involved." Daniel's pulse quickened. "But listen carefully." His father's expression hardened. "If you go after them blindly, they will destroy you." Suddenly, headlights flashed outside the storage unit. Daniel's mother gasped. Several black vehicles pulled into the parking lot. The same men, the same suits. Daniel's heartbeat exploded. "They found us," his mother whispered in horror. The tall man from before stepped out slowly. But this time, he wasn't smiling. "You should walk away," he said coldly. Two men immediately moved toward the storage room. Instinct took over. Daniel grabbed the evidence boxes while helping his mother toward the back exit. "Daniel," she cried. "Leave it. No." Rain slammed violently against them as they ran through the dark alley behind the building. His mother struggled to breathe. The men chased them relentlessly. Footsteps echoed closer, faster, danger everywhere. For the first time in Daniel's life, death felt real. Finally, they reached the street where traffic lights glowed through the heavy rain. Suddenly, his mother grabbed his arm. "Stop running." "What?" She looked directly into his eyes. "You already won." Daniel stared at her in confusion. Then police sirens exploded across the city. Red and blue lights flooded the streets. The tall man cursed loudly as officers surrounded the entire area from every direction. One investigator stepped toward Daniel. "We've been building this case for years," he explained. "Your father's evidence finished it." One by one, the suited men were arrested in the pouring rain. And just like that, the fear controlling their lives for years finally began to die. 3 months later, everything changed. The stolen properties were returned. The company corruption scandal became national news. The crushing debts disappeared. And for the first time in years, Daniel's mother smiled without fear. One evening, they sat quietly outside their new home watching the sunset together. No hospital machines, no landlord screaming, no exhaustion slowly destroying Daniel from the inside. Just peace. His mother looked at him gently. "You sacrificed everything for me," she whispered. Daniel slowly shook his head. "No, Mom." Tears filled his eyes as he smiled faintly. "You sacrificed everything for me first," she cried softly and held his hand tightly. And in that moment, after years of lies, suffering, fear, and pain, they finally became a family again. But the greatest truth of all was this. Sometimes the people carrying the heaviest secrets
I am so glad we
are
could
the
come
same
here
people
today.
trying the hardest
Me
to protect
too.
the ones they love.
I will always cherish this beautiful view.